Perfect. Okay, so my name is Kyle Cabe. I'm an assessor two and an assessor three, and I'm also the account coordinator for the Village of Harrison. I'm here today to talk a little bit about the upcoming interim market update. I'll talk a little bit about it, but I'm going to leave a decent amount of time to answer questions as I know it's been a little while since the last one. So I want to make sure that we have enough time to answer any questions that you guys may have and make sure that you get answers on those. Um, your team is pretty small because I am the statutory assessor and the account coordinator. We do have two other account coordinators that also help out if I were to be on vacation or out for any type of surgery or anything. If you do email this email here, both of the account coordinators, the other account coordinators, have access to this email. So you should always be able to get a response, even if I'm unavailable. And there would be a bounce back if I am unavailable, but just know that both other account coordinators have that email as well, so they can check it if I'm out. All right, so 2024 in review. The last market update was 2019. In 2023, we saw a ratio of 70.43 compared to what the state has for equalized value. And we estimate the ratio to drop to 67 in 2024. So what that means in 2025 is we're looking at an increase that will be pretty close to 50%, if not more. 2024 isn't done yet. Obviously, we've got the rest of September, October, November, and December for sales to come in. So we really aren't fully sure of what's going to happen the rest of the year. Interest rates just dropped a little bit, so that could cause a little bit of a buying frenzy. Um, so we estimate that right now we're looking at a 50% increase on assessed values for 2025. And that number could change depending on what happens the rest of this year. And once we go through and validate all the sales that are out there. In this past year and since 2019 or since 2020, we've had maintenance years. And in those maintenance years, we don't really change assessed values unless someone's changing the physical um, the physical things on their property. So if someone's adding a deck, they'd get value added. If somebody's adding an addition, they'd get value added, or taking away a shed or a garage, they'd have value removed. Other than that, we really don't change values in a maintenance year. We keep them the same because uniformity was set in that last interim market update, and uniformity will be set again in 2025 in this interim market update. So those assessed cycles or assessment cycles can be a little confusing, and the easiest way to remember them is in a maintenance year, unless you're doing maintenance to your house or changing your house, there's not going to be a change to your assessed values. In an interim market update year, everybody's values are likely to change. So everybody in the municipality is likely to receive a new assessment letter, and those assessments are based off of sales. We start looking at sales after the first of the year. The first of the year is the cutoff. So for the 2025 interim market update, we'll be looking at sales from 2024 and 2023. We can't use anything after the first of the year because that's when the assessment cycle cuts off. So everything's based off of 2024 and 2023. So because 2024 is not over yet, we have the 2023 numbers here available. There were 355 sales reported, and of those sales, 237 were valid sales. So when we get sales from the state, we look over them and we determine whether they're valid, valid but not for ratio, or invalid. In those sales, those sale documents we get can be quick claim deeds, transfers of names, those are ones that would be invalid. If you sell a house to your neighbor for $1, that's not a valid sale. It wasn't on the open market. You knew your neighbor beforehand. Those sales get thrown out. If the house is on an open market and a valid sale, those sales are the ones that we count, we look at, and use them in our data to determine what's going on in the market and how much of an increase needs to be put on each style in each neighborhood to get to where the fair market value is or where the equalized value is. Are there any questions on that part? We can ask more questions at the end. I just want to know if there's any questions on that.
Looks like we're good so far, Kyle, so.
Sounds great. For the 2025 assessment cycle, this is an assessment timeline. Now, this timeline was made by our social media and our marketing department, so they space it out very nicely. Assessment timelines are a little more condensed than this. They're not necessarily perfectly spaced out, but you can see here January 1st is the cutoff, so we're using everything that happened previously. So any new construction, wherever that new construction is at as of January 1, that's what you're basing their value off of. So if a apartment building is going up and as of January 1, it's 50% complete, it would be assessed in 2025 as 50% complete, even though it finishes in 2025. You wouldn't see that full value until 2026 on that. So January 1st is the cutoff. We're usually out visiting new construction, usually closer to January 1st here. And then late February, early March, the 2024 sales are due to the DOR. Those are the sales that we go through and verify. So we have to go on the DOR website and let them know this was a valid sale or this was invalid because they knew the seller, or it was a sheriff sale, the bank took it, whatever it may be. We let the state know so that they can come out with their equalized numbers and we can work on our equalized numbers as well. We mail out sales questionnaires multiple times throughout the year. If you buy a house, you will get a sales questionnaire, and that sales questionnaire asks, did you know the person you bought it from? Was it on an open market? Were you coerced at all or forced to buy this house? These sales questionnaires help us validate the sales and let us know if there was anything that wasn't already known as why that sale may be invalid. These sales questionnaires do a good job of giving us more information so that we can do our best to validate all the sales. Building permit inspections and checks. We do that in part of our field work. I'll have a little bit more later in this presentation about when that field work will likely be done. Then we run stats and view that state equalized values report, which is part of the reason why in interim market updates that they end up being later in the year for Board of Review. We want all the information that we can have to make sure that the Village of Harrison gets as close to 100% ratio as possible. So we like to have them later in the year so we can see that state equalized values report and see what happened in 2024, where the ratio is, and what they expect to do for 2025, so that we can look at our sales and see if we're matching up. And if not, we can get a hold of the DOR and let them know that, hey, we're seeing something a little bit different here. Can you explain what you're seeing on your end? In that, working together with the DOR helps get those numbers as close to possible as 100%. Then we would set the final values for the preliminary values for the interim market update. And we would go through mailing the notices, open book, Board of Review. And then after that's all done, we do usually start early fieldwork checks for the next year. And then in December, tax bills come out. So the 2025 plan for this interim market update here in Harrison, uh, Board of Review will likely be late August to September. That's pretty normal for an interim market update, especially when it's been a couple years, usually anything over 2 or 3 years. These interim market update boards end up being late August, early September to make sure that we have the most information available to us to get those numbers as close to 100% as possible. We'll have open book to start in July. We usually like the open book in persons to be completed before the 30-day mark away from the Board of Review. After 30 days, we can't send change notices anymore. We have to send out what are called waivers. When we send out a waiver, we need to get that signed back. If we don't get the waiver signed back, then we need to keep the board open until it's been 30 days since they received that waiver. So that's why we like to have an open book completed, at least the in-persons completed before 30 days before that Board of Review. Notices will likely go out in early July, if not late June, and the field visits will be completed in June. We do send letters out to all the parcels that we're going to visit in person to let them know that we'll be coming and visiting their house. Um, we don't visit every single property. We visit properties that had building permits taken out, properties that had sales, egg properties. We visit, we check egg land properties, and we also we check properties that residents call us about. There's a lot of neighbors who call about other neighbors, um, having us go and check as they may have built something without a building permit. Or we do have residents that call in and say, hey, I'd like my house just walked through just to make sure everything's up to date. And they'll receive a letter letting them know that we're going to visit their property. And then during the field visit, we would come and walk through their property. This is an example of some of the frequently asked questions. This does say 2024, as this was a sheet we've been using all year for this year. We haven't had a 2025 sheet yet. We will go through all the questions that we had throughout 2024 and see if any of these frequently asked questions need to be updated into something new. There's a lot of good information on here, and these go out with the notices. So the notices that every resident gets, they will have a frequently asked questions sheet with it right there so that they can look, they can understand what an interim market update is. They can look to see if the assessor is going to visit their property, or how can my assessment change if I haven't made a change to my property. A lot of those questions like that can be answered right here. We also have a frequently asked questions page on our website, and you'll see all these frequently asked questions before you would sign up for an appointment on the website. So open book is it's usually a 2 hour long period where that roll book is available for viewing. In a maintenance year, you talk to a smaller amount of people. If you have 5 people show up in a maintenance year, that's quite a bit. This year in 2025, we will have multiple days of open book, probably at least 4 in-person open book days, as every single resident will get a notice. So there will be a lot of people that have general questions, a lot of people who want to bring evidence to try to prove their assessment should be changed. And that's what open book period is for. We welcome everybody to come in. We want to talk to as many people as possible. We want to answer as many questions as possible. That open book period for us starts as soon as you get your notice. We have an open book email that receives a lot of emails and is able to answer back on any questions you may have. In that email inbox is from the time you get your notice up until about 7 days before board. So we not only have in person, but we also have emails available as well. And you can also call our office for those open books too. Board of review. Board of review is uh, tentative for August and September, likely late August, early September. Board of review is where the assessor, the board, and any objectors meet. The board of review would talk about things that happened a little bit with the assessor before we go into the cases. And if there are any cases, the objector would present their case, the assessor would present their case, and then the board would be able to make a decision based on the evidence they heard there and determine whether the value is sustained or whether the value is changed. At that time, before those cases, the role is also handed over to Vicky, and at that point, everything that's in that role is final except for the board cases that are being heard. Some important terms to know. One is compliance. A municipality needs to be within compliance, and that is within 10% of equalized value. Whether it's north of 100% or south of 100%, you need to be within 10% once in a 5-year period. So once you've been out of compliance for a while and you see at the bottom here, I do have this little graph that says major class municipal compliance status. No, that means that Harrison is out of compliance, and that's why we do an interim market update. We get within 10% of 100, as close to 100 as we can get, and then the municipality is back in compliance. And that clock, that 5-year clock, doesn't start again until you fall out of compliance, which would either be below 90% or above 110%. Equalized value, the value is set for each community based on the market value of the valid sales in the open market. So previously, when I was talking about valid sales and why we validate those valid sales suggest what equalized values should be. So if you have a home that's currently assessed at 100,000, but it sells for 150, it's showing that the assessed value is below the current market. So when we adjust houses, we're getting them up to the current market. So that house that's sold for 150 that's assessed at 100,000, if it's a valid sale, would move that house up to 150,000. And then the ratio is assessed value divided by equalized value. The ratio, the equalized value is kept by the state, the assessed value is kept by the assessor, and these interim market updates get them as close to 100% or the same as we can get. Educational plans. We do have a marketing team on our staff that will help. I know I've already talked to Vicky about a letter in the tax bill, kind of helping to explain some of the stuff they're going to see in this upcoming year. We have a lot of marketing available. We have it on Facebook, we have it on LinkedIn, but if there's anything that the village wants specifically, we will gladly help make it and be able to provide it to your residents to help, as the interim market updates can be very confusing. We do have live assessors, 3 of them that answer the phone, so they can help as well. A lot of people with general questions like to call that line and be able to have those general questions answered without having to email anyone or show up in person. We do also have newsletters that get emailed out. To sign up for the newsletter, you can sign up on Facebook or on LinkedIn. And then here is our general email, info@accurateassessor.com. And then our number to get to the 3 live assessors is also on this slide. Here's an example of some of the education pieces that we can put out there and that are out on our Facebook. This is an example of mill rate and how the mill rate can change and likely will change in an interim market update because the values are going to change by so much, it changes that equation. So the mill rate tends to drop. We also have things like this. We get a lot of people who call in and say, my house is exactly the same as my neighbor's. Why do we have different values? In this is a visual example as to why. Your house on the outside may look different than your neighbor's. However, on the inside, with all the data that we have on both of these houses, they may look the same, but they're not. And that's why the values are different. Just some helpful things that residents can look at, see posted on your social media, and get closer to understanding what the process is and what things they should be looking for if they do have any questions on their assessed values. Do you guys have any questions that I can help out with?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Clerk Treasurer had mentioned to us some of your different products at one of our meetings, and I think that's what sparked some questions from this. So, is this truly the most complex process, the interim market update, or is there truly a reevaluation process as well, or is this one of the same?
Yeah, so and I apologize if I didn't hear all the question. You were a little muffled, but I believe what you're asking is what the difference is between an interim market update and a revaluation.
Correct.
Yeah, an interim market update is where you take all the sales and all the data that you have, and you increase the assessed values based on the sales data and everything that's available statistically, and you're not visiting every single property. A revaluation would occur if you're doing exterior or interior walkthroughs of every single property in the municipality. The reason why those aren't as common is because they can be very expensive because you're going through every single property. In interior revaluations have become, from an assessor standpoint, very rare. There was case law that changed not too long ago that it used to be if a resident didn't allow you into their house, they wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to object to their assessed value. That case law has since changed. The statutes changed on that. So now residents can not let you in your house and still object to the assessed value. And that's part of the reason why full interior walks aren't as common anymore, because not a lot of residents let you into their house anymore.
Any other questions or comments? Are we good? Well, thank you, Kyle. This is very helpful. And starting in 2025, I guess we'll start doing some education.
Yeah, and I'll work
Thank you
with
very-
Vicky. I'll work with Vicky to be able to set up some education so that we have a lot ready to go, but right when we hit that new assessment cycle.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yep. Have a great night.